I'm going to call to order the September 16th, 2021 meeting of the Finance Committee. Since our last meeting, there's been changes to the Finance Committee membership. I want to thank departing members Jordan Rubin, Aaron Howard, Mark Murray for their work on the committee and their service to the town. I want to welcome the new Finance Committee members, Rajiv Dayal, Lena Polito, and Alan Jarrell. Lena, could you please briefly introduce yourself to the committee?
Hi everyone, I'm Lena Polito. I was born and raised in Shrewsbury, and I'm very excited to be a part of the committee.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee.
Welcome.
Rajiv, if you could.
Yes, my name is Rajiv Dayal. I'm a partner in a small CPA firm in Boston, obviously live in Shrewsbury. In my spare time, I volunteer for the India Society of Worcester in Shrewsbury, the Boy Scouts of America, and now hopefully the town.
Welcome. And Alan's just getting settled, but Alan, if I could also, welcome to the committee, and if you could do a brief introduction of yourself.
Hello, I'm Alan Jarrell. Happy to be here. Is that enough, or do I need to?
If you want to share more, please. If not, that's good.
All right, well, I've been in the town for a little over 20 years and done a lot of different things. I work for the EPA, emergency responder. Been doing that for about, almost 20 years. So,
Great.
thank you again.
All right. Well, thank you, and welcome to all three of you. So now we're going to move on to reorganization of the committee. Before we begin the reorganization of the committee, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Finance Committee for the privilege to serve as your chair for the last 2 years. The Finance Committee has a valuable role to play in the oversight of the town's finances, and it is my hope that in the future, this role can be fully realized by the town. I would like to thank Mr. Mizikar and Ms. Lass for the professional leadership and support. The town of Shrewsbury is very fortunate to have both of you at the helm. I would also like to thank Mr. Adler, who served as last year's vice chair. Mark was instrumental in the construction of the committee's town meeting report and provided valuable support throughout my chairmanship. We will now move on to the reorganization of the Finance Committee leadership positions of chair, vice chair, and clerk. The process will be that nominations will be made for each role, and then a vote will be taken. And then at the conclusion of the voting for all positions, I will turn the meeting over to the new chair. So we're going to begin with nominations for chair. At this point, I would like to nominate Mark Adler for chair. Are there any other nominations? Okay, second. Thank you. Now, are there any other nominations for chair? Okay, seeing none, then we'll take a vote on chair. All in favor of Mark Adler as chair, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Me?
Congratulations, Mark. You're now the chair. So now we'll do nominations for vice chair.
Anyone want to nominate someone for vice chair, please? It's a very big role.
Nominate Vikram.
A second.
Splendid.
Is there another nomination for vice chair? All right, seeing none, we'll take a vote for Vikram for vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now we're going to do nominations for clerk.
I nominate Hannah Kane for clerk. This is what you get for wanting to keep the job, Hannah.
I second
You
that.
get it thrust upon you.
I'm happy to defer if somebody else, Carlos, would like to be clerk.
I'll be the clerk.
I nominate.
I will withdraw my nomination.
Thank you.
Hannah.
I nominate Carlos.
Second.
Okay, so we're going to take a vote. So all in favor of Carlos as clerk, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, congratulations. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our new chair, Mr. Adler. Good luck.
Thank you. Your service was greatly appreciated. I could tell from your valedictory speech that you didn't want to do it again. So
That's correct.
it's been, you had perhaps the most difficult 2 years of trying to run this organization. The raise the hand feature will
right.
never be forgotten.
Chair, I would like to second, you did a great job, Judy, and
I
it was not
appreciate that.
easy. And particularly being on Zoom was quite a challenge with everything, so well done.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words.
I agree. I just joined it 2 years ago, and you ran it very well with the raise the hand, the Zoom, and people getting on, not getting on, so.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, Judy, having you as our chair. You did a wonderful job. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you. I do appreciate that.
I want to stress that it's difficult, the job of the Finance Committee as a whole is we hold hearings. The job of the chair is to run the hearing. So in effect, it becomes the big job, is not some management feature. It is the maneuvering this hearing. And then when you're doing the hearing online with Google Meet, I think that was the software we used.
Yeah.
And we're trying to have some call-in folks to come in with their petition articles, and we're trying to get the public to speak. It is cumbersome and difficult, Judy. You did rise to that occasion, made it manageable.
Again, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's turn to item 3, accepting the minutes. We have 5 meetings minutes. If you aren't familiar with them, we keep it all in our Google Drive. They're very nicely presented. The first one is for, let's see, April 8th.
So moved to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion, any corrections, any changes? All in favor of approving the minutes of April 8th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. The minutes are accepted. Next, we move to the minutes of April the 10th.
I move we accept.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion, any complaints, changes, suggestions? All in favor of approving the minutes of April the 10th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. We move now to the minutes of April the 22nd.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion, any complaints, questions, challenges? All in favor of approving the minutes of April 22nd, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Next, we move to the brief minutes of our meeting before the annual town meeting on May the 22nd.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion of the minutes of May 22nd? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes of May 22nd, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Minutes of May the 22nd, they are approved. And finally, we now turn to the minutes of June the 24th.
I move that we approve the minutes for June
Second.
24th.
There is a motion and a second. Oh, very nice, Hannah, you kept out because you weren't there. I'm like, wow, I see that, because I'm looking at the minutes. You're looking at. Any further discussions on the minutes? All in favor of approving the minutes of June the 24th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Okay. Now the real business begins. We have a presentation by the town manager on the status of finishing up last year.
Good evening, Finance Committee members, welcome to new members. We look forward to working with everyone again this fiscal year. I will get into a very, very brief overview of fiscal year '21. Happy to answer any other questions. We are still in the process of closing everything out formally with the state. We're 46 or so days beyond the end of the fiscal year, and we are ready to submit for free cash. And we have reconciled the accounts through the end of June. But until we really get that state sign off on it, we don't want to dive too deep in. I don't have a free cash number for you, but we expect it to be coming in within a few days from the Department of Revenue, and you are on that as part of the Finance Committee distribution list, so you'll receive that whenever we do. Before I get into that, though, just one other brief note that with regards to the finance team for the town, which was part of the annual town meeting, Mary Thompson, the town accountant, has been promoted to the Assistant Town Manager for Finance and Administration position. She still holds the title of Town Accountant as until we backfill that position for her. And Lori Gaudette has resigned from her position as Treasurer Collector, and the Board of Selectmen has appointed Amy Perkins, who is currently the Treasurer Collector in the town of Grafton, to be the Treasurer Collector. Ms. Perkins will be starting with the town on October 25th, after she satisfies her contract obligations in Grafton. So very pleased to have Amy. I appointed Amy as the Treasurer Collector in the town of Leicester in 2015. So I've worked with her in the past and excited to have her on the team here. So we await her arrival in the end of October. So I'll get into the FY21 closeout. Again, just a few slides. One of the main things that we always talk to the Finance Committee about is our use of the resources that we spend so much time working through in the winter and into the spring before town meeting, and then ultimately get your approval of before we submit to town meeting. So we started with a budget appropriation of $125.2 million. We turned back at the end of the year or had unexpended budget appropriations of $1,943,146. So we spent all but 1.55% of the budget. So I believe that's quite normal for us and a very reasonable amount when we're looking at a $125 million budget to spend all about 1.5%. This year was also kind of a traditional year with about 600,000, a little more than 600,000 coming in unexpended appropriations for salary and wages. Slightly higher than past years, but we were conservative with our hiring dates as we started the fiscal year last summer. Remember, we did not have the annual town meeting for fiscal year 21 until August of last year, and then we were conservative with our approach in backfilling any vacant positions to understand how our revenues were going to be impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So the balance of those funds came in through the expense line items and departments. And again, we utilized 98.45% of the resources that were provided to us to carry out the services and operations of the town. Any questions on that at this point?
If I may, Mark. Kevin, I was just wondering, how do we handle turnbacks? Does it go back to free cash?
It
next
does,
year?
yep. It does. Yep, it's part of the free cash calculation and is one of the significant factors for free cash each year. Yep.
Hannah?
On the expense side, the turnback, was any of that, like, anything we couldn't do because of the impact of COVID, like, specifically, that we then are carrying forward this year and doing, or is it all just saved?
Not particularly that I recall. In looking at the figures, it was more, like 1 or 2% in a number of departments. It wasn't like we weren't able to carry out those functions. And I look forward to providing more details to the Finance Committee at your next meeting if we have time as we consider the special town meeting warrant. So this budget figure, of course, does not include any of our enterprise funds, our utilities. So we will provide balance sheets for them at the end of everything at an upcoming meeting so you can understand their performance as well.
I'm sorry, if I can just clarify. So the 125 is appropriated budget, not enterprise funds or other receipts coming in.
This is the general fund, yep.
Just general fund?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so we often spend quite a bit of time reviewing local receipts as they are some of the most elastic receipts that we have. Our third largest revenue source for the town and its operations, followed behind property tax revenue and state aid. So local receipts for fiscal year 21 certainly exceeded my expectations in their performance. we budgeted just over $10.4 million for fiscal year '21 and realized $13.1 million. Whenever we're developing this budget under such great uncertainty in the spring of 2020, we were wondering what type of economic graph we may experience in the town and the impact that COVID-19 would have. And with Rep. Kane's help from a lot of state models that they were using, we kind of played out several scenarios and took a conservative approach to how much revenue we would anticipate from these receipt categories. I'm very pleased that it at least appears right now that we are looking at a V in the graph with fiscal year '21 recovering back to fiscal year '19 levels. Hopefully it doesn't turn itself into a W with negative implications in fiscal year '21. But certainly fiscal year '21 was very similar to fiscal year '19, although we don't see a growth trend like we did, of course, fiscal 17, 18, and 19 in those more quote-unquote normal years of economic conditions. Hopefully we begin to see that for fiscal year '22. Very pleased that our motor vehicle excise tax receipts came in right at budget, just a couple $100,000, and that's our largest local receipt category, which we budgeted $6,075,000 for fiscal year '21, and came in just over $6.2 million. The biggest, surprise that we saw within this local receipts category, I guess I should have been on the slide a little bit longer, is licenses and permits. Licenses and permits category includes building permit fees for construction and renovation projects throughout the community. That's the primary driver behind this number. That totaled $1.8 million in actual revenue for the town for the year, and that's the highest on record for this receipt category. The previous high was in 2017, the year that Lakeway Commons received their building permits. Within this number for fiscal year '21 includes the building permits for the Edgemere Drive-In redevelopment project, but still being 30% higher than fiscal year 2017. I think we're also seeing the impact of people investing in their own properties and homes, as is kind of widely acknowledged in general media about people putting in pools and kind of investing in themselves as they're not going on vacation and having other way to spend the dollars. So that certainly was a strong performing receipt category, which really helped us drive us over budget. Again, it's the highest on record that we have for that receipt category, and 30% higher than the next highest year. I will also point out meals tax. So meals tax outperformed the budget, as you can see there, but it was significantly lower than fiscal year '19. $575,000 were realized in meals excise tax in 2019 and $490,000 here in 2021. So hopefully we continue to see a strong economic recovery, and that gets back to 2019 levels. And then, as we've had several and ongoing discussions with the Finance Committee, we did not put any significant funding estimates in for cannabis-related revenues. There's two primary drivers for cannabis-related revenues for the town. One is cannabis excise tax that's applied at the sale of cannabis products. And the second is our host community agreement fees. Both of those individual fee categories total 3% of sales to the town, or that come to the town, 3% of sales for the excise tax, and then 3% additional for the host community agreement. So we total $332,000. And that puts us in a position to be able to understand how long those retailers were open during fiscal year '21 and make a better estimate for fiscal year '23 and beyond as we look at the total available resources for the town. So these are the main topics and categories that I wanted to discuss with you this evening regarding fiscal year 21 performance. I will make a note that property, real estate taxes were very strong, over 99% of the $85 million that we anticipated collecting was collected. That left still about $800,000 uncollected, so it's a big number as far as a dollar standpoint goes, but as a percentage, we're very strong in our collections. Historically, real estate collections range from about 98% to 102 or 103%, and they exceed the 100% mark whenever prior year taxes come in and, within a current year if people are paying delinquent taxes. So we can look forward to that hopefully in this year as if we have a continued stable and strong economic recovery. But all in all, I'm very pleased with the result of fiscal year 21, especially in the local receipts category.
Now, this is normally when I ask like 18 different questions, but I'm gonna try to be a really good chair and defer to everyone else. And I also expect that you're all gonna ask the questions that I'm just like really excited to ask. But I'm gonna let Judy, who spent 2 years not being able to ask questions, start this.
I guess my question is in the cannabis area, do we think that that's the number that we're gonna see going forward? Is that kind of what we expect, or do you expect that to be higher or lower going forward? If you
So
could talk about
a
that.
couple of things, on a broad brush, I think it is lower than we can expect in the future. So if we have 2 retail licenses currently active in the town. Those licenses over that fiscal year, since there's 2 of them, they're active in total for about 20 months of the fiscal year. So, 20 out of 24 total months. So certainly 4 more months of sales available through those 2 retailers. And additionally, the Board of Selectmen authorized me to execute a host community agreement with a marijuana delivery company that will be located in town at their meeting earlier this week. We would anticipate them opening near the end of fiscal year 22, the current year. So I think that fiscal year 23 seats, having that 3rd license and revenue source come in, certainly won't, add another 3rd to it because the retail brick and mortar is likely going to compete with the delivery. But we'll kind of have to see how that plays out. But I still think at this point, it's not the maximum that we can expect in this category.
Can I have a follow-up? So actually, could you elaborate a little bit on the delivery? I mean, I think we understand if you go to a store and you buy something, whether it's a cannabis store or not, you buy a product and there's sales tax. How does that delivery work? Is it just the cost of the delivery? And
The license that the board has, the licensee will be a delivery operator. So they will not be like a DoorDash or an Uber Eats type model where they would go to a retailer and pick up product and deliver it to someone's home. They're gonna maintain their own retail inventory and make sales to the entire region.
Okay.
The benefit to the town of Shrewsbury is that we will realize all the sales tax since the sale originates in Shrewsbury. So if someone from Oxford, buys from that delivery company, we'll receive that 3% sales tax. Oxford will receive nothing. So that's, again, delivery operators would have been allowed to deliver to Shrewsbury since we have retailers. So the Board of Selectmen, I think, wanted us to have the greatest financial benefit. So that's why they moved and allowed this company to move forward in town. So
excellent,
it's
thank
really
you.
the best environment, and they will also domicile their vehicles here, so we'll receive the excise tax as well.
Wow, it's great.
Oh, sorry, he was first. Vikram?
Quick question on the
Hold
license.
on a second, Vikram.
Sure. Thank you, Mark.
You can't hear me, I've got the mask on, sorry.
Pointing and looking.
I'm pointing and looking, and that's a problem, I gotta work on this. You over there,
Okay, sir, thank you. So, Kevin,
and you'll be next.
mine is more, I have 2 questions. One is a numbers question.
Sure.
So I think you mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, that we had budgeted around 10 million for local receipts, 10 million odd.
Yep.
And so we we received about 13 million. So I was just wondering, like, when I add up the categories on your final slide, it's a little less than the 3 million difference. Were there
Yeah.
any other major categories?
Yeah, so I did just kind of pick and choose. I think the most striking to me, or a couple that I wanted to highlight. So we do track about 26 different line items in local receipts, and I'd be happy to share that with the committee after the meeting this evening, so you can take a look at each one of those. But those were kind of the most substantial, one motor vehicle being the biggest, 6 of the 10 or 13 that we received, but then just like the kind of the anomalies, those that overperformed.
Okay, that's great. My second question is related to motor vehicle excise. So, do we have any tools based on sales that have occurred after these collections to sort of model what our expected receipts for next year would be?
Unfortunately, no, we don't. We talk a lot about motor vehicle excise tax and our primary billing occurring in late February and being due near the end of March. So it kind of puts us in an underhanded position as we build the next year's budget. I do have concerns about being able to be aggressive with motor vehicle excise tax, again, because of all the things that you hear about, chips and everything else, and, no cars being on car lots and things like that. So if sales do not continue to be strong, I am worried about how aggressive that we can get, but, I'm also very surprised, actually, in a normal year, we tend to meet our budget mark sometime around April, and this year we didn't get it until June, so it'll be interesting to see. So again, we bill out, 5.5 or 5.25 of the $6 million in February, so it's really tough to know.
Thank you. No more questions.
Okay, Dennis?
Yeah, I had a question on the licensing permits. Do we have an idea of, like, what percentage of the town already did their upgrades to their housing, put additions on, major additions on, pools, et cetera? And is that gonna be used to budget in for next year? I mean, what do we think will that keep up? Because that is a big trend.
Yeah. I can get some data on the building permits that we issued in the fiscal year, and it's normally included, it's always included in the building inspector's report, but we can provide, in the annual report, we can provide that.
Yeah.
I certainly do not anticipate budgeting much more than a normal amount, which I would say would be about half of what we experienced this year, around 900,000.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
getting at. We
Yeah.
have the Edgemere in there, that's a big bump.
Yeah.
I don't expect as many, additions to be done, because I think everyone in my neighborhood did one, and,
Yeah.
there's probably that many houses left to do additions on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think in a hearing like this, it's good to let people know that, this was a great number, but it's probably not gonna continue that
Right.
as strong a trend.
So again, the Lakeway Commons 2007, fiscal year 2017, which was our previous high, we experienced $1.4 million in receipts in this category, and then the following year, 958,000. So, it took a pretty good tumble. But I would expect, again, it to be something closer to normal, than the 2 following years were in the mid 800,000. So I think that's probably where we'll have to land on a budget figure for receipts as we work into '23.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else?
Could I just follow up on that licensing permits? Do we happen to have the number for the fiscal '22? How much we have for that?
Yeah, so fiscal year '22, we have budgeted, we budgeted 847,000. And in July, we received 107,000. So, off to a good start, but it's, kind of prime construction season, and that will slow down in the winter months, so.
Anyone else? And I have a question about all these extra permits and such. Did we have a stress on the inspectors, on the assessors, on the ZBA, or even the planning board, although planning board's a little more long range? But did we manage to meet the needs of the community without taxing the staff too much?
That's a good question. Probably the biggest impacted aspect is the building inspector's department, and we are fortunate over the previous 2 or 3 years to staff up with a building inspector and 2 assistant building inspectors. And then we have a wiring inspector and plumbing inspector. So staffing levels being what they are, with the support of this committee, we are able to meet the demands without being too stressful for staff. We had to find unique ways to do it. Sometimes we did video inspections and things like that, but yeah, we were able to manage.
Okay. The other question I had was on the 4 categories you show us here, and then on the previous slide, you kind of give us a kind of an overview of how the year has gone. But you'd previously said that we had spent 98.5% of the anticipated expenses for the year. And then it looks like furthermore, furthermore, the receipts were really high, or is it because the receipts were really high? Are those
No.
two separate things?
2 separate things, both good. Receipts exceeded budget by about $2.6 million. So again, adding to free cash in our net position at the end of the year, the money that we didn't expend that was appropriated to us, and then the revenues that we received over what we budgeted. So both independent benefits to the bottom line.
And you don't see necessarily that we're gonna make any change to the prediction for new growth, as we were talking about earlier?
I will be
because-
making a recommended change at town meeting for how much we anticipate in new growth.
I'm sorry, you said you would?
Will,
Okay.
yes, yep. So we budgeted around $825,000 for new growth for the fiscal year '22 budget. And just, that's a time thing. The more time we have, the more we know. So we'll be able to bump that up to about $1 million as we go to the special town meeting in the fall.
Does that require a DOR approval?
DOR certifies our new growth every year.
Right, but the prediction for the next year, like if we want to say, hey, next year we're gonna do this number, we don't need DOR to approve it, they just simply need to come back on it, or how does that work?
Yep, so the number that we'll use to start the fiscal year '23 budget will not be approved by DOR, but it'll be based on our prior experience. So we normally start out somewhere around 850,000 for new growth. We have a lot of data on it, obviously, decades worth of data, and that's where we've been comfortable. So I believe we'll be somewhere in that range to start next year as well.
Okay, thank you. Is that it, everyone on this? And Kevin, is there anything else on this presentation?
There is not.
All righty then, let's move on to reviewing the draft special town meeting warrant. That's also you, right, Kevin?
Yes, thank you. So be discussing 12, so we're considering 12 different warrant articles at this point for the special town meeting to be held. We've included a copy of the draft warrant in your drive for this evening's meeting, and I'd just like to touch upon a couple of them, but won't spend much time on the details. The first 2 articles that we're proposing, the first one is to establish an insurance trust fund. And we've been working over the past few years to try to find the appropriate mix and amount of deductibles on our various insurance policies. And we have shifted to higher deductibles, especially in the area of injured on duty insurance, which is police and fire workers' compensation. We've done that with the work, Alex does a lot of work on all of our insurance policies. And, we work with our broker, and we have a $45,000 deductible on our injured on duty policy. And our analysis on that shows that in most years, we'll save money on premium and deductibles in comparison to running a lower deductible program. And then, of course, we have deductibles on our professional liability, our property insurance, and our auto liability, and they range anywhere from $1,000 to $7,500. So in order to most efficiently budget, and have a stable budget environment, given those deductibles. They may fluctuate in any given year, and our injured on duty deductibles actually can carry from year to year. They follow the claim. So if we only have one officer, say, that's injured in the month of June, and that's our first injury of the year, and it's something significant that requires surgery, it may take another 24 months, and we'll be billed for that deductible over time. So we need multi-year flexibility. So the utilization of an insurance trust fund, which is available to us in the general laws, would kind of be like an insurance stabilization account, where we would regularly or occasionally feed money in there based upon the deductibles that we use in any given year. But not every year would we have to overinflate the operating budget to ensure that we meet all of our deductible requirements. So I hope it has a moderating effect on the amount of money that we have to put into the operating budget, and hopefully, in the near term at least, lowers the total amount that we have to fund. As we develop this trust fund, it's like a sinking fund. It'll stay there year to year. So if we have a really good year and spend only a couple $1,000s in deductibles, we may not have to add any money, which will be a benefit and allow us to use those resources for other things. So I'll just touch real quick on Article 2 and then
Can I just
stop
ask-
for any questions.
Yeah,
So
let's-
Article 2, we had a previous account.
Hold on a second, I think I had a question on that.
Well, I didn't, so can I just ask on the?
Yeah, of course.
This one's related, though. Is that why you want
It
to
is,
cover
yeah.
them both? I'll
Yeah.
wait then, that's fine.
So Article 2, we had a like account in the past that, had one section of the general laws, and I want to incorporate two sections of the general laws into the first article. So Article 2 would abolish that old reserve account and move those funds into the new account that we're creating in Article 1. There's about $45,000 into that account, right?
I was just going to ask, what's the order of magnitude of money we're talking about? Like,
So, again, the biggest annual deductible that we have is $45,000 on our injured on duty. I would think at any given time, we would want to have between $65,000 and $80,000 in this trust fund.
because I'm just wondering why, like, is this, obviously it's in general law for a reason and communities want to take benefit of it, but would this be something in the past that has come before us? Because I don't remember one coming to us for approval out of our discretionary fund.
Yeah, we've been able to budget and manage recently within the operating budget, but we just instituted deductibles on the IOD, is it 21? 20, in fiscal year 2020.
Okay.
And we're experiencing a little bit of challenges because of that multi-year aspect of it. At this point, with some injuries that we have in the uniform services, so it'll provide us that flexibility, and then hopefully, in total, we need to make some adjustments to the general insurance budget, which I noted in June. But we'll have about $1 million in the total budget this year, and hopefully year over year, we can decrease it a little bit if we're gonna utilize this trust fund. We budget right now for the deductibles in that line item, but I think this is just a kind of a safer and more stable way to do it. This, the account that we're abolishing in Article 2 was established in 2000.
So is our concern been that we've been overfunding, and that is committing too much funds to this to make sure that we're not that we're not caught flat-footed? And so if we create this trust fund, we can kind of have that backstop, a reinsurance fund or some other better way to express it?
Basically, yep.
Okay. Anyone else on these two? Okay.
Okay. Fiscal year '22, the current year budget transfers. So there are some significant items that will allow for tax rate relief, which we're very happy to talk about. The Board of Selectmen, the school committee set their commitment to the community that was supported by the Finance Committee as well, to utilize resources that were provided through the override, but also do everything that we could to minimize the impact on taxpayers. So there's two significant debt service items that will be able to reduce the amount of money that we have to raise from taxpayers. The first and largest is we will be closing on the sale of Centec North next Thursday.
Hallelujah.
$6.5 million sales price, which is exact amount that we paid for it. We will experience, after all closing costs and debt is satisfied, we'll have about $2 million in net cash proceeds from that project. So that will be good, and we can talk about that in Article 4. So that will have significant downward pressure off of the tax rate because we will satisfy those bond obligations and won't have to pay all the interest and principal for this current fiscal year. So that's about $400,000. And then we also need to make the adjustments, which we didn't make because it happened too close to our budget hearings, the benefit from refinancing Sherwood Middle School. And everyone may recall that we have 0.75% of interest on that refinancing, and that will allow us to shave about $150,000 in total interest costs off of our needs for fiscal year 22. So those two things will reduce the amount of money that we have to raise for exempted debt purposes. And then, as noted in the spring, we've also achieved full funding of our pension system. And with that, we will not need to contribute as much as we had originally anticipated for it. So we will reduce the amount of funds that are going to the pension from about 3.3 million down to $1 million. We will move some of those funds into other post-employment benefits to satisfy our accrued liability there. But it will free up several $100,000. I just don't have an exact figure as we continue to work through other budget adjustments in the general taxation that will provide relief to the taxpayers. So very happy about those gross adjustments that we can make in debt service and in the pension system. And again, we will not raise to the maximum that we could, which will provide that tax relief versus what otherwise we would have been able to raise to. So we will be making some other miscellaneous transfers. We'll need to add some money into the general insurance account to include the total premium for the Beal School now that we have a certificate of occupancy. And make some other adjustments in certain budgets. They're relatively minor in comparison to the total amount of money we'll be reducing for the debt service and for the pension. So rough numbers, a little over $1 million less will have to be raised from taxation than what otherwise would have when we went through the annual town meeting budget.
Any questions on, this is Articles 3 and 4, right?
Well, just 3 at this point.
Oh, just 3,
I'm
okay.
happy to talk about.
Any questions on that, folks? Okay.
So Article 4, when you sell a piece of property that's owned by a municipality, those receipts, any proceeds from that sale are reserved for future appropriation. It can only be spent on something for which you can borrow for greater than 5 years. Everyone knows within the Toblin Hill Nursery Drive area neighborhood, we removed the Toblin Hill Bridge due to a structural deficiency. It's been out of commission since about 2015 and actually physically removed since 2018. So we plan to use about $1.4 million of the $2 million in net proceeds to reconstruct that bridge for that neighborhood. We are also investigating the Versalock walls in the vicinity of Nursery Drive, which is the other entrance into that neighborhood, since they were constructed by the same company. We currently have engineers out there assessing that and would dedicate funding to make any improvements that we need to that. Hopefully there's still some funding left over that could be dedicated to a future capital improvement project, but we're just happy to be able to get that significant project off of our list and funded without any impact to the taxpayers.
Questions? Okay.
All right, so Article 5 is the Accelerator Repair Program, which is about $1 million investment in replacing the windows at the Oak Middle School. We are seeking roughly $25,000 in free cash to fund the schematic design cost of that project. Ultimately, the schematic design and total construction project cost would be supported through a 52% grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority. So we are exploring and testing our ability to use American Rescue Plan Act funds, since it is an air quality improvement for the school. But to be safe and to clearly demonstrate that we have the funds on hand that we need for the MSBA, we'll be seeking to put free cash in place, again, roughly $25,000 at this special town meeting.
Would this commit us, should the money not be available otherwise for the full project? Didn't come on, the rescue plan?
So this only commits us in the MSBA to the schematic design, and then there's another step along the way where in the spring, and then for the town at the spring town meeting, we would have to appropriate the construction funds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you talked about maybe using some of the, I guess, COVID relief funds. So if that came through, would that replace the $25,000? So whatever we put up here, there's a very good chance that we'll get it back.
Yes, definitely.
Obviously, someone's put their tax money into the COVID relief funds, but it is something that if we can get it, we're probably better off getting it.
I'm happy to talk a little bit about that before we close out for the day, our approach on those funds. But yeah, absolutely, we get our free cash back. Ready? Okay, so Article 6 is an expansion of exemptions available to taxpayers. It just provides enhanced exemptions across a number of categories. This was identified by our new assessor, Ruth Anderson, who's been on board since May. And we can provide further detailed analysis to you at your upcoming hearing on that. Article 7 is to establish a special purpose sewer stabilization fund. We've done this for the water account, and this is just a capital improvement stabilization fund for the sewer.
How would this be different from the regular sewer fund that we have?
So this would take money from the special revenue fund, so from the enterprise account, and set it away for future capital improvements.
And we need a separate fund to do that? You can't just put it all under one pot?
Yep.
Okay, well, what have we done in the past when we've had to do these projects under the sewer system?
The traditional way here was to put money in what we called the sewer construction fund, which is a general fund that technically didn't need reappropriation at town meeting, but this would require future appropriation. This is, again, a financial reserve of the sewer account, so it improves our total reserves whenever we're looked at for a bond rating, and also allows town meeting to have additional controls and conversation over future spending of funds that are placed into the stabilization account.
I see, so instead of having this general purpose construction fund that effectively town meeting doesn't look at anymore, this is something that every year the town meeting is gonna have a sense
Yeah,
of.
either put some money in or take some money out. Yep.
Right, thank you.
Article 8 is putting funds into that account that we establish. We'll propose $250,000 from the sewer rates. And then Articles 9, 10, 11, and 12 are all zoning bylaw amendments. Happy to have Town Planner Cahill in to discuss the details of all those at your hearing in October.
If Bernie already has those, could he send them to us so we don't
Yeah, we'll
have,
get them out. Yeah.
sooner better?
Sure.
Obviously, if it's not ripe yet, that's fine,
No,
but
but
it's nice to
they're ready.
just get a sense of it.
We'll do that.
So actually, kind of skipping back a little bit, I just was thinking about, you said that, the pension, that we've reached full funding, and so we're not putting it, we don't need to put in as much money in as we had expected. You're gonna put some into OPEB, but then, so that was part of it's contributing to the money, so therefore we don't need to raise the tax levy as much. I guess I'm kind of wondering, I understand that we made that the idea is not to overtax the residents, but I guess but also part of it was if we can stretch the time period of this override, so that's kind of, if we don't tax up to the levy, then we're taking in less money, and therefore it could contribute to, oh, now we've got to ask for an override sooner, and I could see that being an issue. So that's kind of one thought that I have sitting there. The other question I have is, we're fully funded now, but if the market was to take a nasty turn, we might not be fully funded in future years. So that kind of contributes to my question of not going to the full levy because, hey, it's great that we're fully funded, but that can change. I believe we were fully funded 20 years ago. I mean, that can change pretty quickly. So those are two sort of thoughts that I have kicking around in my head. And can you address how we manage the potential yo-yoing effect of that pension fund, and also the thought process between not going to the full of the tax levy and trying to make this stretch longer, which I think might be a better thing. But anyways, that's my
Yep.
question.
So with regards to the pension, we sit at about 101% funded, and we use a discounted rate of 7.5%. So that means that we assume we will have a market performance increase of 7.5% every year. Our 30-year trend is 9.3% return on investment. So we have a very conservative discount rate in comparison to our actual market experience. And our normal cost, which is that, the amount that's not contributing anything in excess, that in theory would just allow us to move sideways year over year, is about $600,000. So we're contributing $400,000 over our normal cost.
Okay.
The risk, if I can categorize it that way, in overfunding the pension is that there's no way to undo it. So if we get into a situation where we're funded at 105 or 107 or 120%, if there's a massive market correction, it would help us then. But if we continue to experience that long-term trend of a 9.33% return, we're in it for the long game, and we're at 120%, we're really putting numbers like $20 million into the pension fund that really doesn't need to be there, that we can use for other things. So that's really the reason that we're able to turn it back right now and are comfortable with this funding schedule, and we'll continue to move money on an annual basis from OPEB to pension and pension to OPEB. So we're not giving it all up and allowing it to go to pension, or salaries or other expenses that would hurt the operating budget. So we still retain flexibility within our overall post-employment benefits area, including pension. So those are the things that we have been thinking about as we set this number for making this revision. Now, the other part of not raising, so it's just first and foremost, it's a recognition that for the average single-family home, we anticipated the total tax increase to be about $700 for this coming fiscal year. Now, that included Proposition 2.5, debt service, and the Proposition 2.5 override. There was a lot of conversation in the spring, as you will recall, about, well, you're getting all this funds from the Rescue Plan Act, and can't you use that, and what are you going to do to help the taxpayers? So ultimately, at the annual town meeting, we set aside $3.1 million into the override stabilization fund, and we're anticipating spending in the general operating budget $137.8 million. Ultimately, when we leave the fall town meeting, we're going to spend less, about $1 million, which means we'll need less in the future to even feed it at the percentages that we've agreed to. And we can provide taxpayer relief without jeopardizing that minimum commitment to not coming back for an override. So math-wise, Judy, I agree with you. If we would raise to the limit, put more money into the stabilization fund, we would be guaranteeing even longer duration of this. but I think it's just balancing the impact to taxpayers. That reduction, kind of in my head right now, is over $100 to the average single-family home, so it's not inconsequential, so, yep. Insignificant, excuse me.
Any other questions? Dennis?
Are there any other unfunded liabilities similar to pension fund that, could be an issue going forward?
Just OPEB,
Okay.
which is the town's responsibility for health insurance for our retirees. And it is a big number right now. It's about $30 million in unfunded liability. There's no requirement like there is for the pension system to fund that by any point in time, but we do need to make.
But it is something we're gonna have to deal with, whether it be
Yep.
this year, next year, or
Yep.
10 years from now.
Yep. Yeah, we fund, our responsibilities to our retirees, so we pay 50% of their health insurance. We fund that on an annual basis through the health insurance line item.
Yeah.
It's about $1 million, so it's not as big of a liability as the pension system itself was, but it is something that we need to be diligent about covering the cost.
And are we making headway there? Excuse me, second follow-up
Yeah.
question? Yeah. Are we making headway in that?
Yeah.
Are we bringing that number down every year
Yeah.
below the previous year?
I mean, we're doing a good job in comparing ourselves to other municipalities. We have about $6 million in our OPEB trust fund. So it's, more than a lot, but having the pension fully funded, we are the only pension system in the Commonwealth to be fully funded right now. That allows us to kind of pivot those, resources and put us hopefully in a better position with regards to OPEB in the future as well.
Okay.
Excuse me, because just to kind of catch up a little bit.
Yeah.
So did we say that last year we were fully funded for our pension plan, or
As of January 1st, 2021.
2021?
That's what our actuarial is done for January 1, 2021.
And the funding required in fiscal '22 to be fully funded again, is that the amount which is in the budget for fiscal '22?
Right now, no, we've greatly exceeded that. There's about $3.2 million, which was our previous funding schedule. That was our previous funding requirement, and
Okay.
we're gonna reduce that from down to about $1 million, a little more than $1 million.
And the million number would be what's minimum required to stay fully funded, or is that in excess of it?
It's about 400,000 in excess, so our normal cost is about 600,000.
And what would be the thought to contribute more than required?
Just a feeling, just kind of make sure that, since we are just at like 101% funded, the retirement board also adjusted another knob where they're, so in employees' pensions, a portion of the base pension is subject to annual cost of living adjustment. Currently, the town of Shrewsbury is at the minimum, which is $12,000, is able to experience a cost of living adjustment every year. The maximum that it's allowed is $18,000. So the retirement board plans, as they committed to, once we achieve fully funding, they're gonna buy $1,000 every year, increase the base that's subject to cost of living. So it just kind of helps a little bit. With that $1 million, we can go to normal cost or negative normal cost technically on paper within 2 years. So it's just a little bit extra insurance. We would like to stay somewhere between 97 and 103% funded. We asset smooth, so, an annual loss or an annual gain is smoothed over a 5-year period of time. So we have that kind of flexibility to stay within that range.
Thank you.
I bet you didn't know that we asset smoothed.
I did.
It's very cool, actually. Hannah?
Yeah, I just want to, make sure that people heard you, because of course you say it like it's nothing, like we're the only city or town in the Commonwealth that has fully funded a retirement.
Yes,
Like, that's,
yeah, we're the only ones, the
Yeah.
only ones. Yep.
that's pretty significant.
Yeah, there are some cities and towns that are less than 50% funded, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think including a big one right to our west.
Yep.
The city of Worcester is very,
And then the other big city out there in Springfield as well. Yep. Not to name names.
Yeah, go ahead.
With the pension itself, with the markets having been at sort of all-time highs now for a few years, we've seen it before. You know, what goes up does come down and then goes back up. So is there any concern, or have we done anything with the pension plan to be a little more conservative going into this?
Yeah, so our pension funds are invested by a financial advisor that manages the market for us, 50% of it, and then 50% is funded in the PRIT, which is the public retirement system managed kind of by the state. So, you know, we are not really even that risky of a portfolio, given our long-term responsibility. We have a limited areas where we're allowed to invest those funds, type of asset, or type of funds and things like that. So, yeah, it's not managed internally, it's done by, you know, professional, significant, you know,
No,
investment
I
firms. and
yeah, I
yeah.
would
Yeah.
imagine that. I'm
Yeah,
just
but-
wondering, has there been any thought as to that? I mean,
Pulling it back a little bit.
9%'s a pretty good rate of return.
Yep, yep,
It's basically S&P 500 just below it.
Yep.
So that's, be aggressive.
yep, yep.
Anyone else questions on this? Yeah, go ahead, Alan.
Just a quick question. All these articles have money estimates. What would you say is the total amount? I mean, you mentioned numbers here and there, wherever. I was just curious.
Yep, I think in total, well, the budget's gonna be a net reduction of more than $1 million in total spending. So I mean, I think in total, new appropriations, gross of that is probably only about, as far as the operating budget goes, about $200,000 in changes for the fiscal year. We're still really working that out, and we'll provide full details to you at the next meeting. But yes, as far as the general fund goes, that's about the estimate, about $200,000 in actual spending, upward spending adjustments, but we'll net out at less than $1 million in comparison to the spring.
All set then? Okay, thank you, Kevin. We will move on now to reviewing the meeting schedule. It's basically, right now, all we're talking about is the special town meeting, which, let's see, the 14th of October, Thursday, would be our public hearing. Would we have any business of our own anticipated, or we'll find out when we get there?
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any business other than the warrant.
Okay. And then 4 days later, Monday evening, are we actually going to be at Oak
Yes.
for that? Okay.
Yes.
Will there
That's
be
the
any
plan.
restrictions, or are we playing it by ear?
Well, everyone will be masked. The Board of Selectmen does still have the opportunity to reduce the quorum through the end of the calendar year. We won't arbitrarily have the clerk sit 5 or 8 rows down from the end. We'll allow town meeting members to spread out throughout the entire auditorium. And department and staff attendance will be limited to those department heads who have specific warrant articles to keep the number down. So,
Are we going to have the prima donnas in the separate room if they want again? Or is that not going to, are we not going to have that
individuals that
separate room?
can't mask will have a separate area.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
so, for non-town meeting members, I know before these field, they're
Yep.
still gonna be limited to the very back rows, and
There'll be a specific section for them. Yep, they'll still be able to come in.
so they'll be able to come in.
Yep.
so these are the dates. Anyone, obviously, we're not going to be changing the special town meeting date, but anyone got a problem with the meeting for the public hearing on the 14th?
No.
Okay, well, keep us in the loop if there's a change.
Yep, we'll get you some more information that you requested this evening.
Fantastic. All right, other business, is there any other business?
Can I just note real quick on the Rescue Plan Act? I won't talk long. So, just remind everyone, we anticipate receiving $11.5 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds. We've received our first 50% of that throughout the course of the summer. So we have about $5.75 million on hand. Of those funds, we'll receive the second allotment of those funds next summer. And we have through December of 2024 to commit those funds into contract and encumber them for allowable purposes. We're halfway through the 30-day window where department heads are submitting proposals for utilization of those funds. Those funds don't need to be appropriated, but we're going to be very transparent on how we propose to use them. Our initial estimate for revenue loss is about $900,000. And we'll develop a separate plan for the use of that, which will also reduce the overall impact on the tax rate. So we'll keep you posted on that, but we turn to kind of an internal grant development process, and we'll have a team make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen on the utilization within the 4 categories that we're allowed to spend those funds on.
Question? Who makes up that internal grant team? Is that,
Probably be like the senior leadership team of the town. Every department head, every department, all employees are really encouraged to develop ideas for spending the funds within the guidelines that we've provided them. But likely the review team will, be made up of 4 or 5 of the senior leadership team, assistant town managers, chiefs, DPW director, folks like that.
would there be no outside person, like a finance committee member or some other member?
I haven't really thought about that far. Everything will be due towards the end of the month, but what we do at that point, it's a good suggestion though. Yeah.
Okay. Hannah?
In the criteria that you put out to folks to suggest ideas, was it clear that these should not be ideas that extend into future operational budgets? Or are you looking at both things that might have a future operational budget?
So future operational budgets, departments will have to demonstrate the ability to be fully funded by the operating budget by fiscal year '25. So there'd have to be some declining use of those funds. So we are not limiting the use of the funds to a single fiscal year, but we're only allowing project requests to come in for the first half of the funding. So we are working with our partner organizations like Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services to help them as well, and that's kind of the same criteria. We actually have a second meeting with Christine Mowry coming up next Monday to find kind of that on-road or on-ramp or off-ramp, depending on how you look at it, as we use those funds to not create a cliff. So, but they'll be very limited in any ongoing expenses, so we don't have that issue.
Thanks.
Anyone else on that? All right, so, any other business? That's it for other business.
Motion to adjourn?
Hold on, correspondence. Other side, half of it's you, Hannah.
That's why I made a motion.
Now I'm gonna make you read them all, okay? Actually, I don't think I have to read these all. I can just acknowledge that we have some correspondence, isn't that right? Okay, we have some correspondence. The only one that's worth mentioning at the beginning is one that is from Hannah from a couple months ago about the development of the budget. Actually, the second one is about, a notice about a line item for, the police department. So thanks to Hannah and, thanks to, Senator Moore as well on the, police funding. But, Hannah, it's really great that, you're keeping us in the loop on these whenever the the work that you're doing, whether it gets through a hostile House of Representatives or whether it's successful, still keeping us in the loop is very valuable, not just to the Finance Committee, but also to the Selectmen and the town leadership. So thank you. Thank you for that. Did I hear there was a motion to adjourn?
I did.
Yeah, is there someone on that?
Second.
Second.
Yeah, all right, all in favor, motion carries. Let's get out of here. Thank you.
Thanks.